Welcome, our friends and Reanimated fans. I'm AJ Conrad, here as always with the intrepid Stuart Tiffin. Hi, Stuart.
Good morning, HA. Hello.
Hello, hello. So we're here. We have a few little news tidbits to talk about. Um, Before talking about the very disturbing handling the undead, which we debated about, but eventually decided to watch. So I have a
Yeah, it's
lot of
kind
thoughts.
of kind of weird how we came around on. I don't know what happened or if it was just like the lack of other content to talk about, but you and I,
I think
neither of us were that thrilled to talk about handling the
um,
undead.
I'll, I have some things. I mean, I think that the trailer to me was almost more disturbing than the actual film, although I think there was a lot of disturbing parts. Um, but I this is a Norwegian film directed by Thea, and I don't know how to say her last name. I apologize, any Norwegian people listening to this.
I'm gonna go with Taya Vistendal.
Okay, cool. That sounds great, and I'm gonna leave that to you.
Yeah, thanks. I have no idea.
But
Apologies.
it's based on a book by John Lindquist, of the same name. And so we'll be talking about that, but we have a couple of little news items. It's kind of interesting how supernatural types of creatures and things kind of come in and out of vogue. There seems to be a lot of wolf things happening, creature things, more wolf man type things happening. And
Wolf and Vampire, based on some of the other
yep,
trailers we've been talking about.
yep. So there is a trailer for the Wolfman or Wolfman coming up. It was kind of fun. What did you think about it?
I also, yeah, enjoyed it. There's a lot of this like, well, it seems like it's a bit of a theme based on what we might be talking about next time on the show. This is a good trailer though. It comes together with a lot of intensity, and the imagery looks compelling, and then the story looks like it's going to be heartbreaking. So those three things, you got me.
Yep, and this comes out in early 2025, right? I think so, anyway.
I think so too.
Christopher Abbott, Julia Garner. So we'll have to basically start to we'll have to review it when it comes out. Um, I will say that this was sort of supposed to be part of a series, I think. Um, and this is like the idea of sort of rebooting the classic like horror films, and that's what this is supposed to be. So it's a reboot of the like 1941 version of the film.
Hmm.
So but and this is the Bloomhouse productions. And so I know that they were doing this. They were doing something else though as well, I thought, because their idea was to basically reboot a lot of the kind of like creature features and things like that. I know that this was originally, I think, supposed to star Ryan Gosling, but apparently that didn't go.
Huh.
Uh, but
Is this
I
guy
don't
a Ryan Gosling stand-in?
I
They don't
don't
really have
know. I don't
much.
he does not look like it to me, but Ryan
Yeah.
Gosling's busy doing, Barbie and things like that. So
Yeah, at
there you
SNL.
go. And I will say that this was originally scheduled to be released this coming October, but it got pushed to 2025. So I don't know what happened with that, but look forward to reviewing it when it comes out. So that's kind of exciting news.
That is exciting.
Next up is another looking kind of like a great trailer, but a really
This
disturbing trailer.
this to me feels a lot like Bird Box in some
Yeah, it
ways, even though
does.
it's a different conceit. But then like halfway through the trailer, you're like, is Halle Berry the bad guy? There's a lot of questions this trailer brings up. It doesn't show you the whole movie, I don't think. It's a good trailer, and it's called Never Let Go, and it has something to do with ropes attached to your house. And
Yeah.
I think one of the more disturbing elements of the trailer is the fact that there are children. There's children in both these trailers. I don't know what it is with horror and being like, let's put kids in peril, and
Yeah,
that's
'cause
great.
yeah. And this is actually going to come out in later this month. So in theaters. And so Alexandra Aha, I think, is the director. And then it's Halle Berry. And I mean the kids look really kind of awesome, so that'll be fun. So let's see how it goes. I found the trailer disturbing enough that I'm like, I might have a hard time with this in the theater.
Yeah,
You know how it goes.
yeah.
Um, And so we'll have to see um once it comes out whether we can both watch it. But I think this would be definitely kind of I, so let's just say that this seems like it like treads upon some of my like kind of no-nos involving children. And I don't know that it involves possession, in which case I'm okay with it. If it's just sort of like a generalized evil, I don't know.
I
Maybe I
mean,
can
there are
go with it.
glimpses of zombies or
Yeah.
like undead looking things. So
Yeah, but it's
yeah,
unclear
it could
what.
still be possession because of the way that they twist it with Halle Berry halfway through the trailer, like three-quarters of the way through the trailer, she might be evil.
Yep.
So
Hmm.
that's like right. I think that's a good way to edit together a trailer in a way that
There's enough
so
ambiguity and interest.
yeah,
Yeah,
and
so
yeah, sure, you're not going to go in completely cold, but what they've shown you only kind of piques your interest. It doesn't make you think, oh, this is one kind of movie. Anyway, so I think that that was kind of cool the way that the trailer was put together, and also the child actors appear to be quite capable, which is important when they're going to be doing some heavy lifting. But they're also trying to keep up with, oh, award-winning Halle Berry, who can chew the scenery if she needs to.
yep.
Yeah.
So looking forward to that. Um, all right. And uh last but not least piece of news is this announcement or they're kind of ramping up for the second season of Daryl Dixon show, but they're already talking about the next season.
I think
And
they must have already greenlit a third season. AMC has a habit of doing this.
yeah, and it says that production is already underway. But this time, Carol and Daryl are going to be in Madrid, Spain. And we were joking earlier. I think they're just picking places where they just want to film like really beautiful things. And so they're going to be in Madrid.
Yeah.
Um, and so I would imagine it's also probably a little easier to film out in different areas of Spain because, the cities are incredibly dense, but outside of the cities, it's just a little easier to find like places. That's why like in Game of Thrones did a lot of filming in like outside of Sevilla and things like that because there's like, not so many people and it's probably easier to do productions. Though Madrid is certainly very urban, so we'll see. And I was joking that I think some of the great artworks that are housed in Madrid are going to make an appearance in the show. My bets are on either Guernica or the Garden of Earthly Delights, but we'll see. Have you ever
And
seen? And you do not have not seen either of those paintings, or
yeah,
are
I would just like to throw out a shout out to anybody else who doesn't know what these paintings look like because they're uncultured Philistines like myself. I got you guys. Don't worry about it.
you know who
AJ,
Hieronymus Bosch is? Come
yeah,
on.
he's a detective in Los Angeles who solves
Ah.
crimes with his daughter. That's who Hieronymus Bosch is, and he's Harry Bosch. That's a great show,
I
by the way.
actually do like that show a lot.
Yeah, because
But no.
Titus Welliver is a heck of an actor. But yeah, so Daryl Dixon going to Spain in season 3 and 4. Somebody else put in that article, but I don't think that that's been approved or confirmed. That might have been a Norman Reedus quote, actually, but which is just bonkers.
I just like to imagine Norman Reedus just enjoying the tapas and hanging out, having some fun in Spain.
Yeah, I wonder if they'll get Melissa McBride to go with, since she was kind of not into the idea of having to move to Europe for 2 years, and now maybe 3 or 4.
Well,
We'll
maybe
see.
maybe something changed, or maybe her role, who knows? Like maybe it's enough that they're able to keep this pretty tight. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe they were like, "Look, we'll get all of your scenes shot in three
It-
weeks, and then you can go home." And she was probably like,
and
"That's worth the paycheck."
there's definitely worse places in the world to be filming, I would imagine. That place I'm pretty psyched to head to Spain at the end of the month. I think it'll be fun. So
Well, let's
not
hope.
to be let's be clear, I'm not like, guesting or anything. But
Oh, we'll
I'm not
see.
gonna be I'm not gonna be upset if I see production of this going on. And I may check it out. If something's happening, I'm gonna see.
Just
Um,
walk through the background of the scene.
yeah, yeah, you'll get to see me. No.
Just a well-dressed H.J.
I
Conrad in the zombie
I would
apocalypse.
I would imagine that they keep those scenes and I would imagine they're doing all their filming probably usually at, like early in the wee hours in the morning,
Yeah,
etc. Just to keep the
to avoid exactly that
yes,
scenario.
exactly that scenario. I mean, Have I ever been impeccably dressed? No. All kidding aside, I am psyched to see the show. I'm psyched for it to come back. And I think I kind of like the idea of the Spain being the setting for some of this. So,
Yeah. Let's do all of Europe. Let's go do the whole thing. I'm down for it. But we cannot delay any longer getting to the meat of this podcast, which is recapping and collectively, dealing with our trauma of handling the undead. This film is from Norway and it came out in 2024. You already mentioned that it was directed by, I'm going to say it again, Thea Fistendal, based on a screenplay by herself and John Lindqvist, who is Swedish, but I guess, he can still do stuff in Norway. That's cool. Um, did you get the celebrity sighting that I was racking my brain about once Peter was introduced?
oh, I guess I missed it.
The character of Peter in this film is from one of our top, I want to say top 10, maybe top 5 zombie movies that we've ever watched on this podcast.
Oh, who
Can
is
you
he?
can you guess which one?
No.
I'll give you a clue. He performed the film in two languages, once in French and once in English.
Oh, wait, no.
His name is Anders Danielson Lie or Lee. He's David, not Peter. I thought his name was Peter. David. He's the comedian dad, and he
Oh,
was from
okay.
Night Eats the World. He was the drummer and the guy
Uh,
who did a great job of like counting his food, but sadly also kind of descended into madness.
yeah, but okay. Well, cool. I missed it, so thanks for pointing that out. That's awesome.
Every time he was on screen, I was like, where do I know him from? And
He
then
did look very
finally,
familiar to me, but I
yeah,
just thought he was one of those people that,
one of those guys.
Yep.
Also, one other caveat for this film is getting the names of characters was almost impossible because there's not a huge amount of dialogue.
Mm-mm.
So every so
Oh,
often, some people like Elias is called out to a lot. Um, his mom is called Anna. I feel like her name was said once in the whole film, and I
mhm.
feel like it came in the last fifth of the movie.
Yeah.
And then otherwise, the other family, although I completely misid'd Anders Danielson Lie's character as David versus Peter. I'm still not sure. There was Ava, Flora, and Kian, and then the
Hey,
other
could you,
the two
hey,
older
could you,
ladies
yeah, I don't even know their names,
never
but
got them.
I think, yeah, I don't even know. So,
Um, yeah, so some of them we just never got their names, but you kind of there's basically three stories being told in this film. Three, well, three. The story is about these events and how they impact these three groups of people, and they don't intertie. They don't come into contact with each other. Um, if you had to sum up this movie in one word, H.A. Conrad, what would it be?
I think, gosh, I don't even know. It is depressing.
Yeah,
I don't know. It's really, um,
I'm torn between using the word bleak, which there's a lot of bleakness
yeah,
in this film, and then grief, which I feel like it
yeah,
is basically a movie about
that's,
processing grief in a way.
and just so we know, the two older women are named Tora and Elizabeth or
Okay.
Elizabetha. So, um, yeah. Um, and one of the one who plays Tora, who is the woman grieving her partner, is I mean, again, I'm gonna mess up her name, but I think it's Bente Borsum, and she's 90 years old.
Holy
Oh.
smokes.
Yeah, yeah, and she was awesome. Anyway,
There's a
yeah,
few older actors in this movie, and one of them, Grandpa, looking at you, has to do a lot of work.
yeah, he does a lot of work in
I
this.
mean, maybe they've just cut it together in a way that so he's not actually having to exhume corpses, climb stairs, carry water, but it feels like he's having to.
We're gonna talk about Grandpa and a lot going on with him, which I have wow, just questions, and Anna is going through a lot, but you gotta think that there's probably moments when she's talking to her dad, and this is based upon a because it's based upon the book. There are things that, and there is a limited amount of dialogue and exposition here. You don't get all the stories, so I can fill in a little bit about why Grandpa's acting this way, but not knowing some of this background makes it a little bit confusing.
Hmm.
Not totally confusing, but it doesn't. This is the one sort of nit I do have about this film. I think it is gorgeous. I think that the slow pace is makes sense and really hits home this process of grief and the different stages that people are in. And I think that that is like it's a rough movie to watch without question, but I
Yeah.
do think where it falls down is that I think without providing some of that exposition or background, you miss some of the connections between the characters, and it could have had an even honestly like a harder hitting punch at the end if they had included some of this. So we'll talk about that. But yeah, the actor who plays the grandfather is just like, woof, this is a pretty physical role.
Well,
Um,
yeah, like I was saying, I think they cut it so that he's only actually carrying those giant jugs of water for like 30 paces, and he's probably not climbing all the steps in that apartment building. But they put his character through some trials for sure. That actor, by the way, Bjorn Sundqvist,
yep.
his name is Mahler, but I don't think he ever gets called Mahler.
No, he
It's
never
weird
gets.
because Mahler also means painter and or
Mm.
artist in German. Um, he was in Dead Snow.
Oh. Hmm.
Maybe it's just a small enough country and a small enough group of actors that they're going to be in other Norwegian films. But he was not like a big character, but he was, I think, the guy who warned them that it was dangerous up in them hills. His credit is Wanderer.
Hmm. So he is this Bjorn Sundquist? Is that who it is?
Yeah, Bjorn
Yep, yep.
Sundqvist.
Sorry. You're so much better at this than me.
I'm just making it up. I don't know if that's
Um anyway, so I did know this about him is that he supposedly because he's just this omnipresent actor, there's like a sort of like a running joke that he appears in every single Norwegian film ever made. So I thought that that was kind of funny. Um but yeah, and he's 78, which is, you know, again, he this is a pretty action intense film. As slow as it is, he has most of the action.
Yeah, I
So,
will say in the first 5 minutes there is a pretty cool bit of cinematography too.
oh
Like
yeah.
a lot of the work that this film does is just like putting a camera out and just like hitting record and like capturing whatever's in the frame. And maybe that sounds stupid, like that's what all movies do, but this it feels more intentional in a way that a lot of films I don't think can capture, or it feels more authentic and peaceful just because it's just like, oh, Twilight, or like
Well,
here's a quiet room. Like the sound work is really important to this
yeah.
too. I think that, but it's whatever they're capturing in the frame and the sound. But then there's this scene at the beginning of this film where he's walking between two buildings,
Yeah,
and the
the drone
camera,
shot.
I don't know if it's a drone. I feel like it's a guy on the roof of that building with a steady cam, and he
I
just
don't know.
walks from one side of the roof to the other because it doesn't follow him off the roof. You know what I mean? Like, 'cause once he
Yeah.
gets into the building, it cuts to an interior shot. So I feel like they literally just put a guy with a steady cam up there, and then as he walks out of sight, the guy walks across the roof, and then they pick him up again. It was just well timed. I mean, it's not like a feat of amazing. I don't know how difficult it is to put that kind of shot together, but I assume that they had to be like, all right, Grandpa, cue, go, and then like slow down, speed up. It was cool. It was one shot. It was cool. That's all I'm saying. I don't think there
But
were other shots like that in this film, though. I
oh,
think that was
there was
was.
the shot. There was a shot of the cemetery that I thought was not quite like that, but
Mhm.
this sort of far away. Um,
Oh, the one where the people are like they're using the excavator and stuff.
yeah,
Yeah, that
and
was still, wasn't it?
I thought it. Well, anyway, um, I did think that the cinematography in this was great. The editing was great. I thought that the color was like desaturated and it was really I've never been to Oslo. Have
I
you?
actually was there in January,
Oh,
no,
that's right.
in December. Um, oh no, January, and it was no, it was a lot more vivacious, even in the dead of winter, than this film in summer. Like kind of depicts it. So I do think desaturation, yeah, definitely was at work here. Not only with the scenery, but also with the people, especially when you start contrasting
Right.
the returned with their living folk that they were with.
And one of the things, and this is the other, like, so it looked like there was basically total, like a cast of 20 for this, and it does feel like almost weirdly sparse in this city, which is a quite densely populated city. So there is that, and I think that's deliberate. I think they are definitely trying to show the isolation of these different characters and the griefs that they're feeling and really put
Yeah.
all that fully on display. So I do think that that's a piece of it. But to your point, I also think that the other thing that really contributes to this like bleak atmosphere
I think
is
there's only been two lines of dialogue. Like by the time we get to the video game scene, we've already gone through Anna. There's been a lot of loud music for part of her scene, but she says one line to her father before she leaves her house. And then she goes to work, and there's like one line or two
yep,
lines. Then we get the older lady open casket shot. Nobody, I didn't
yep,
think anybody speaks in that scene. And then
nope,
you finally get to Flora playing video games, and then you finally start to have some dialogue because it's a family setting.
right,
But I feel like that's got to be 20 minutes into the film. There's been three
right.
lines of dialogue.
But the atmosphere is really being created with the sound effects and the
Yeah.
soundtrack.
Yeah, like yeah, you were
Soundtrack
sorry,
is
you were
killer.
saying the fans in these early scenes are
Yeah.
really pulling their weight a lot.
Yeah.
Super
So
cool.
so it's a really, and I did read some of the reviews. I don't know if you caught any of them, Stuart, but
I looked at a little bit at the Roger Ebert.
interestingly, there's like kind of like two different schools of thought, and I understand both of them. I think if you went into this film thinking that this is a zombie film, um, you're going to be disappointed. It's not a traditional zombie film, and it definitely is, I think, a study in grief and grieving process and how like complex it is. And one of the things that I think people, and you hear people say this, like I would give anything to have that person come back. Um, and other things have definitely examined this idea of the returned and revenants and things like that. And we've watched some of those films. I think that this one is almost because of the pacing of it, it has like a lot more weight. And so then that's the other school of thought is that it's incredibly disturbing and bleak and successful. And a couple of people said that it stayed with them after they watched it and they thought it was amazing. But it really is an art house film. It's not your traditional zombie film. So I definitely think that maybe some people went to this thinking it was going to be that and it isn't and were disappointed. And
Yeah.
there was like definitely a few things that were like, this was so boring. It was worse than watching paint dry or something like that. And it's like, well, I think you have to kind of be open-minded when you go and see a film like this. And I think that it's very deliberate, the pacing of this, because it's supposed to be like depressing and feel, I think, a little bit futile. And you're just trying to go through the paces of your day and it's showing those sort of normal things, but they feel really like just hard and struggling. And you're struggling with these things. And there are definitely like, and I do think the successful part, just a few bright moments in the beginning with the family, with Ava, and is it Shan or something, the kid, and
I just figured it was Kian,
Kian,
but
sorry, Kian. And then and then your typical teenager, Flora, and these interactions between the dynamic between this family is, a standard family. And Flora's like your typical angsty teenager.
yep.
And the mom is like, Ava is just still like, oh, I still love you, and sends her this like goofy thing and has like this really like good sense of humor and things like that. And so I thought that those things were incredibly successful, but also make it even more horrible when, the things that happen in the film happen.
Yeah.
Um,
She
so
because
I,
Eva is really the only person we get to see before she's a zombie
right,
in this. The other two zombies that we get to the other two main zombies that we get to spend time with, we
already gone.
never knew like even the kid. We can just imagine that the kid was a normal kid and much more a very different version of his zombie self. And the older lady, we have no clue other than in the way that her partner has been responding to her.
Right.
Um, but
And
yeah,
and
so
that
it does
and so
drive
I
more of a hammer into the Ava
yeah,
story.
and so I do think that if you look at it in that way, I think this was an excellent execution of a work. It was 4.1 million to make, did not do so well at the box office, but as with many of these films, I think a lot of the money they make is on the back end through streaming and other things and other deals that they make. And I have a feeling it may hopefully make back some of that, though again, if they're sort of advertising this as your traditional zombie film, it is definitely not that. So
I don't feel like there was, well, we're obviously immersed in this genre. There was no, I never had the conception that this was a traditional zombie
oh,
film.
I don't think I did not either, but apparently some people did. So just putting that out there for our listeners, like if this isn't of interest, feel free to skip. But I really enjoyed it. I thought it was like a very successful it, I thought it was a successful execution, though I have not read the book. And the one piece that I would say is pretty significant that they didn't get into, and maybe they didn't need to, but it's the reason why the father Mahler is so there's a few things like it's obviously his daughter and they're both grieving, but apparently the little boy Elias died at the vacation house, and it was the grandfather watching him.
Hmm.
So
Yeah,
that
you kind of get that sense.
you
Just
get
well,
a sense that there's a background, but they
because
don't.
she doesn't want anything really to do with her dad, who is really trying to, it seems like atone, but in like small acts of service that he's doing for
Well,
her.
but I think what it does do in a way that they don't totally. Well, I mean, his sort of above and beyond and his just desperation um, to bring his daughter back from her grief is definitely wrapped up in his own grief and guilt. So I think that's one piece that I think I found interesting to find out about.
Yeah.
But
That's the probably my favorite of the three stories is the one of
yeah,
Anna, Gramps, and Elias. The like when the thing happens, this event happens that causes people to become zombies. Um, there's supposed to be a car accident, we can assume, with Ava. I thought they were setting it up where she was going to collide with Gramps.
so did I, and
Because
they
they
didn't do
had them both
that.
driving and showed that he was falling asleep at the wheel, but then
That's what I thought it was going to be, but
he
nope.
makes it to the cemetery to sit by the grave. This event happens. I could have sworn the dude's name was Peter. Maybe it's David. The comedian gets a phone call from the comedy club where he's been doing his act and goes to the hospital, but you don't get to see the accident or whatever. Maybe she was also complaining of having a really bad headache. Uh,
Yeah.
it's like there's a lot of question marks about what happened to Ava. But all we know is she dies and he's called to the hospital where they don't turn any lights on and he's just sitting in a hospital room with her dead, which
Yep.
seems like an odd choice. But he's there when she starts to breathe again. And Gramps is lying down. Well, he's like passed out because of whatever happened. He also got like a head pain from whatever signal it was that went out that turned people back on. And
Yep.
he's like lying down with his ear on the somewhat freshly turned earth of Elias's grave and hears some thumping. Which honestly, the amount of thumping he's hearing, I don't feel like we ever see Elias move that much the
Oh,
rest of the film.
it's almost like he barely moves, right?
So yeah, can we talk about Zombie Elias? Is
Mhm.
he just a puppet? That's not a real kid, really? Or maybe it is in one or two scenes.
But
That's a
yeah,
puppet though, right?
I think so because it's really weird. I don't know.
It's creepy AF.
Yep.
Yeah, its eyes look really weird. It does open and close its eyes. It kind of opens its mouth sometimes, but I think there's like an uncanny valley thing going on with this too. Also, the way that they're carrying him and moving him around, either Anna is super strong or that puppet doesn't weigh as much as a normal kid because he's, I want to say 8 or 9 in size, and that generally 60 pounds, and they're just kind of tossing him around and carrying him through doors. And maybe she's just a beast and doesn't feel weight. But I feel like that kind of, for me, I was like, I feel like he would look heavier than they're making him look. That
Yeah,
was my own thing.
yeah, I agree. And I think that to me, it was definitely a puppet she was carrying around. I thought the same thing. But
Yeah, like I don't know, like the thing I'm trying to figure out in my head is, am I more disturbed by the weird uncanny valley that it presents to my mind of like that looks like a kid, but I can like there's elements of it that are off that are giving me the heebie-jeebies,
right.
or am I freaked out that it's a like that it's a kid, a dead kid that they're carrying around? I don't know. Like my mind is kind of like not has not figured itself out on this yet.
I think it's both. And I do think that the fact that it's like it's really hard to watch everything with this kid, right? I
Yeah.
I like so many like there's the mo which like it's heartbreaking, it's horrible. It's like and you know, there's the moment where she like goes into the room and sees him
Yeah,
and
what a great scene. What a
and
great scene.
it's so hard. And there's also the horrible scene of the grandfather. Like granddad's like putting eye drops in the corpse's eyes. Like
Yep. He does
the
some stuff to its stomach while it's in the bath that makes him
yeah,
gag. Like
yeah,
I love that
really,
actually. As far
yeah,
as like horrifying elements of this film, whatever he does, which you suppose is he's like expressing foul elements out of its stomach or something. I'm not sure.
don't
They
know.
don't show you because you're looking at it from a weird angle, like a low angle, but like the way that that's done is super nasty. And though
Yeah,
that continues, there's a few scenes where you hear something going on in its stomach, you know,
yeah,
and
yeah.
you're like, oh God, he's still like rotting. I don't know what's going on, but it's not good. Whatever's happening is not good. And she like
No,
later on in the film, she sees like a stain on his shirt and sniffs it, and she's like, oh, that's definitely shit.
he's just not. I mean, like, look, he's not reacting. Like, he's just kind of this shell, with a slight amount of animation, and it's like, and even so, it's of course like so the grandfather's done all this to kind of make him better or bring him, I don't know, trying to take the idea of corpse off him, which obviously he cannot do because he has been rotting. He's ex essentially like kind of a little mummified.
Yeah,
Um,
the skin of the puppet is it looks waxy and
yeah,
dry at the same time. They've done a great job of making this puppet's face super disturbing.
it's
Um,
really,
yeah. I'm
it's
also
really,
just calling it a puppet because it's easier to do that than say this
yeah,
kid's face.
yeah, agree. And so, I mean, you can tell what you're feeling about it, but even this moment where like her looks towards her dad, it's like, what have you done? And this, he's definitely like, oh, look what I'm making it all better because I brought him home, and this just horror at what this is. Um,
Like
and
the fact that she goes into his room, then immediately turns off the light, leaves the room, smokes a cigarette, that has a bit of a think, then tries to kill herself.
yep. I mean, I think
uh,
that tells you how she's feeling about it. And
I
then her,
assumed she thought she'd lost her mind, like that she,
yep, I
yeah.
think so too. Or even if she didn't, was like, this is not worth it, right? Or I can't even think, or my mind can't even accept whatever the heck is going on here. So, um, I think there's so much happening here, and then the grandfather stops her, like stops her attempt. And it's kind of like he's really trying to make sure he's trying to make everything okay, and that's just not gonna happen.
Yeah.
So I don't.
And then when the cops show up at their door, that like later that day, we can assume it's Grandpa who's like, "Don't tell them. They're just gonna take him away." And because she's like, he should be in a hospital, and he's like, no, he should be with family. Um, and yeah, honestly, the way that things go, probably should have been in a hospital. Probably should have answered the door and talked to the cops. Yes, you would have lost access to your dead child, but I think, this is part of the process that they're having to go through.
Yeah, one thing that I did read about in terms of the background of the book that it does make me sad that they didn't show more of this. Apparently, there's a lot more of a description about how the government and hospitals were handling this phenomenon. And as you and I are both very interested in, well, what would
Yeah.
the logistics be? What would the details be? How do you manage something like this? I think that would have been an interesting element to add into this.
Yeah, but not in the character of the film that they were making
Right.
in a
But
way.
not in the
Like,
character. So I get why they didn't put it in there. And I think
yeah.
that they did give a little bit of a hat tip to it, just in that you see the cemetery scene and the fact
Yeah,
that this is
exactly.
widespread. It isn't just which is, it
One of the
isn't just,
things I loved about that cemetery scene, which is just like a wide background pan, not panning shot, but like a wide background shot. There's a couple soldiers sitting down having a break. There's a guy running an excavator. I couldn't
Mhm.
tell if he was digging things up or burying things.
Yeah, hard to know. And they
There's an
let
ambulance driving through. There's been another scene of two cops just going up to a guy in a hospital gown in a park and like trying to get him into their car. And there, yeah, in that cemetery scene, there's somebody talking to another person who's sitting on the curb. But overall, like this is the scene of the government handling this. This is kind of one of those very few scenes that we get in this film. And one of the things that I feel comes true is just how calm the response is. Like people are mostly sitting down and dealing with this, like yeah, there's a guy in an excavator. Yeah, there's an ambulance driving through very slowly. And then there's a shot of the outside the hospital. There's one reporter. There's one guy with a cell phone who's taking video. Like, and everything's just pretty chill. Like, yeah,
yeah.
the dead have come back to life. Yeah, we're handling it, and nobody's freaking out. That's just part of the whole vibe of this movie, though, is like,
Yeah, like even the way that the doctors in the hospital come and tell David that they just don't know what's happening. Like they
yeah,
basically come and they're like, "Well, we don't really even know why they're like her oxygen is so low, her breathing is so low." And the interesting thing is he's in this weird dark place because he doesn't know what's happening with her, and they say that they're going to do an MRI of her brain scans and just to see what her brain activity is. And um there's so much of the unknown, and he went through thinking she was dead, and now she's kind of half alive because
yeah.
they all don't talk, they don't interact, um and you know
Until later, then they start to
until
interact.
later until later. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Like
it's
David gets a rough. I mean, there's only people are only getting a rough go of it in this film. That's just kind of what it is. But so yeah, like you said, he's come to terms with the fact that she's died. Then she comes back to life, and then he kind of leaves her at the hospital because it's the right thing to do. And
right.
then he can't get a hold of anybody. Like that's kind of the middle part of the film is him calling the hospital constantly and not talking to his children most of the time. Which I'm
Yeah.
like, where are you, dude? You're like, you have scenes of Flora kind of running off to be with her boyfriend, who's a squatter somewhere. I'm not sure that those scenes did anything for me in this film.
Yeah, I didn't know those scenes didn't do anything other than she wasn't dealing with what was happening with her mother, I guess.
Yeah,
Um,
maybe that's
but
all it is. It's just showing her process.
but I will also say, kid r driving the bike without a shirt, that was kind of a weird choice, but cool, cool. Um, I like I do think that just showing how each of them is kind of dealing with it, that was, I think, the purpose of it. But and again, like that was one of those sort of things that they were saying it was so slow moving and you didn't really see the bonds of the family. And so I think we got a little bit of that at the beginning. Um and but it would have been nice to see a little bit more of the connections between this family before having what happened to Eva. But um but yeah.
Yeah, all you get is one morning or eat dinner, one dinner time
Yeah.
that Flora isn't even present for. But
Right.
she is playing a zombie video game where she's shooting zombies, which I thought was interesting. You can tell that there's probably more to that story that I think is probably in the book.
Do you know that game? I was going to ask
No, I don't think that was a real game.
you. Oh, okay.
It didn't look like one that I know.
Okay.
Let's say that. So yeah, Flora is yeah, kind of a typical teenage, a little bit rebellious, but she's also she's there for her dad and for her brother later on in the film, in a way. But she, like because this movie is three stories told in an hour and a half, there's not a lot of time to develop these people too much.
Right.
And Anna, Gramps, and Elias, I think, get the most time, and so they're the most developed. That doesn't make the Eva story any less traumatizing because when they so it's Kian's birthday.
Yeah, poor Kian.
It's Kian's birthday.
He's never gonna forget that birthday.
He's a sweet kid. Like they established that early on. Compared to Flora, he's a ray of sunshine.
Hmm.
And he loves his mom, and he it's his birthday, and he gets a bunny rabbit, which is like the one time that David appears to be doing some parenting after Eva's died or gone to the hospital. Gets a bunny rabbit. They're like, and then they get on a train and go visit Eva in the hospital, as you will with your rabbit, to see like how's
Yeah.
mommy doing? Is she alive? Is she not? Um, I think this was parts of this were in the trailer. Like we knew something bad was happening to this rabbit.
Yeah, we know. I mean, anytime you talk about a rabbit or anything, I don't know. I was like, this is not gonna go well.
I
Uh,
wonder if Norway has a PETA
I don't know.
or like for whatever the RSPCA. Feel like they killed an actual rabbit on set.
You think so?
I don't know. It got very close. The
I don't.
actual crack and the drips of blood happen after, but the and maybe the screaming of the rabbit is looped in and it's not that actual
Yeah,
rabbit
I don't
screaming.
think that they. I don't. I cannot imagine that they did this on screen. No, no. If they did, I'm choosing to not believe it. Oh, that's terrible. But it was disturbing for sure.
Yeah, she just crushes Balthazar to death. Great name for a rabbit though, Kian. Good job.
Hmm.
Happy birthday. Happy that's it. That's all I wrote in my notes. Was happy birthday, Kian after that scene. Then they like take the dead rabbit home, and kind of the end of that story is yeah, you've got David's bawling his eyes out, finally coming to terms with the fact that yes, his wife is dead. Flora, I don't remember what her final scene is. Is she just back with her boyfriend, or is she like looking sad? And Kian is out blowing a trumpet and burying Balthazar in the park
Singing and
and
singing a
singing.
weird little song. Yep.
Yeah, uh, yeah. That's kind of their whole story, and it is terrible and horrible. And the makeup on Eva is pretty good. She looks
Yep.
she looks different from the other two zombies because she's the freshest, but
And
she
also
also
get the car accident. So there's also
she's there's a lot of bandages and yeah and
yeah,
damage to her
trauma.
skin. Um, so what did you think of the two old ladies plot?
So
We haven't talked about it.
that also is, clearly they were partners that had been together a really long time. It's so incredibly sad. Like you see the grief um that I'm gonna like mess I will talk about the name so we have a name.
Her
Um
name is Tora, right?
Laura, yeah. So there's you can see like the apartment, the life that they built together, and the grief she's feeling. Like she doesn't even want to answer the phone when she comes home from the services. And even when she sees her partner, I mean, it's this great amount of joy, but there's also this grief that follows because this she isn't Elizabeth isn't interacting with her. She's just kind of there. And um it's sort of like this idea that her partner's back, but not really. And everything she's doing, like she's taking a lot of care with her and putting makeup on and trying to get her to eat, which does not go very well. Um,
Yeah, she kind of nips at her hand, and
yep,
Tora looks momentarily disturbed.
yep,
But then, like one scene later, she's just dancing with her to Nina Simone.
yep. Um,
Um, yeah,
and it's a weird, not weird, but like it's a just a to me that story just shows so much of the grief that there's a wall up, like somebody dies and they're gone, and like that you might have this shell, you might have this thing in front of you, and um, I mean, I may be drawing too many things with this, but like I feel like there's some commentary also about like the right to life or things like that, which may be a wrong, it may be a wrong parallel to draw, but it sort of feels like that person is here but not, right? So. I like there's little marks on Elizabeth's body, so I don't know what kind of like why she died.
no,
But it was probably long, maybe, and Like I think that there's just you're seeing the grieving process like right in front of you, all these things that they used to do, and she's trying to like recreate those with no success. And so ultimately because ultimately Tora decides to like to kill herself. And the one like and I don't think they ever explain what happens in the book, like why people come back or why they don't. But I guess it's like that signal thing. But Elizabeth basically just decides to take her own life. And um and then we see kind of like that uh sorry, apologies. Tora decides to take her own life with Elizabeth there, and Elizabeth basically eats her corpse, which is gross.
Yeah, well, Tora's not in the bed when we see her at the end of the film. Elizabeth is like chomping on air in the hallway, sitting down in the hallway. There's a vase of flowers that's been knocked over in the living room. So it
Yep.
feels like we've missed some stuff. Something, maybe there was a struggle, maybe. But yeah, and Tora is on the floor of some room. I forget, maybe it's the bedroom, but with half of her face is missing.
But she
Um,
had taken pills and been
she
drinking
had,
wine a
she
lot.
had,
I
yeah.
think that that was the intention.
Sure,
So,
but they don't show us. So it's maybe I'm trying to read more into it, but I just feel like there were signs that if she had just been still in bed and had been eaten, I would say, yeah, she died in bed and that was where everything happened. But otherwise, what? Elizabeth moved her corpse and knocked some stuff over and then
maybe.
yeah, she could have. But by the end of this film, or in the last like 20 minutes of this film, the zombies are all kind of being violent. Eva's killing Balthazar.
Hmm.
Elizabeth has eaten Tora's face, who may or may not have been dead when it happened. And out in the woods, where Gramps and Anna have taken Elias to their little island cabin, we've seen another zombie wandering around. This one is a big dude, looks a little bit threatening, but not really, like, because he's slowly just kind of waiting around this island. Um, yeah, so Gramps goes to get more water in the boat, and Anna's like, "Oh, there's somebody else on the island." Interrupts her skinny dipping. Um, and then this film suddenly kind of turns into a zombie movie.
Yeah.
So I kind of wasn't even expecting that. It's maybe a little bit because they were toying with this. We're expecting them to get violent in a way. Maybe because the trailer has kind of made me think that that was going to happen. Maybe it's just because of all the zombie movies we've seen. But suddenly there's a zombie outside the cabin putting its hand on the window. It's not super threatening, but you're like, I wouldn't go near that guy.
No, and he's like the kind of first thing that person that we see, at least in this context, where he's not they don't know him, or at least we don't think they do.
Yeah.
And he is sort of like, he comes out and has a struggle with Granddad, and that's something that like is there is sort of this and like he does threaten Anna at first, and she's like, rightly so, hiding from him in the house. Um, but um, the struggle doesn't go well, and so this is the first sort of like, violence towards another person, other than the nips and things that we've seen from Elizabeth towards Ava, but
And the bunny.
and the bunny. But this
And
is
Gramps
full
does
on.
start it. Like he hits the zombie with a
Yeah,
stick, but
yeah,
then you cut back to Anna, who's like, "We're getting out of here," and then she looks over and it's chomping down now on Gramps' neck. So
yeah,
Gramps dies by
yeah.
zombie while Anna's getting into the boat with Elias, and as she's doing that, she goes ah, and the
He didn't
puppet
hurt him.
the puppet has bitten her. You don't see any blood. It's not like Dawn of the Dead 2004, that
Oh,
where the kid chomps out Sarah Polly's husband's throat. We're not there. I'm not sure that that puppet has teeth. Um, yeah, so Anna just gets in the boat, paddles to the middle of the whatever fjord that they're on, and then they have a moment. She's just like lying there peacefully saying, what does she say to him? I'll see you later. I love you.
yeah.
And then she dumps him overboard. and
Yep.
he sinks like a
Shove,
stone.
and just
It's
shoves him under and he's gone.
that was the end of that. I mean, I get it metaphorically. She's saying goodbye. Like this is like the healthiest version
Healthy,
of this.
I guess, because like, I mean, look, Torah and Elizabeth, that's pretty rough.
That's not good. That's a bad one.
Like Torah's
Um,
just like my wife is just kind of this shell, so she's gonna be like this, and that's that. I guess we can only hope that Torah didn't feel her wife eating her face, but
yes,
like,
yes, that would be even worse. And then presumably Ava is just still in the hospital um, forever, while her family maybe buy a new rabbit and try to get over how traumatic this whole thing has been. Knowing that she's there, like that's one of the toughest things to like the fact that these people all have lost someone, and then the reintroduction of the dead people into their lives makes things so much worse.
yeah,
It's
and it's people and people that they've lost at different stages. So you have
yeah.
the spouses that have been together what it would seem like for like insane amount of time, like their soulmates, their wives, and like that relationship. You have the couple that has a family together and young children and a teenager together, and it's that point, and then you have the mother with the child. So it's like three different aspects and at three different points of grief, which I do think is pretty brilliant. But you know, um,
Yeah, it's compelling and it does make for a good story. It is just not the kind of story that most zombie films follow.
oh,
And that is great. And it provides, a fresh take on the genre, albeit a bleak and grief-stricken one.
correct.
Um, Also, the author who wrote the book, Linkvist, also wrote Let the Right One In,
Yep.
which is a vampire story,
Yep.
which came out in
And I
2010.
would say, and he specifically talked about this film as it related, like apparently his father died drowning, and so I would say that that informed some of the things that he showed in this film or in the
Hmm.
book. So that is kind of interesting. So and Let the Right One In also examines a lot of interesting things. So I would say it's a lot more darker and a little bit more. There's some pretty disturbing themes in that book and that movie. Um, and but it is still the idea of grief and loss and how we're viewing these things as humans and what a complex and difficult thing it is to process. So
And of course, that's not what we usually are going to watch a zombie movie to
no,
feel.
no,
We're
no.
not generally thinking about grief and loss, even though it's a movie about death. So it's kind of interesting to think about why that is. But what a good film. I'm not going to say it was fun, because there were parts of it also where I was like, okay, how much longer is left in this? Just because it is difficult to watch, and like, how many bunnies can you watch getting slowly crushed to death in front of your children before
Ah,
like this is tough.
well,
Um,
I will say, I just found an answer to your question
which was
that the character of Elias is definitely a puppet for the whole thing.
yeah.
And I
Even
guess
when he's standing up and they're doing the remote control car, that's a puppet too.
yeah, they said that they tried at first to do scenes with like a 5-year-old in makeup, and it just the child seemed too alive to be dead, and they just said it didn't have the effect and that horrific effect, and I think that's a deliberate effect then, that they
I
did with the puppet. So
That's
I think
cool.
that's interesting. That must have been pretty hard to manage. So like, well done. And it
Yeah.
was super creepy, without question. They got what they wanted.
They definitely did the whole Baby Yoda thing, uh, except this time horrifying. What a great film for us to talk about though, HA. I'm glad that we could do it together because I definitely was gonna have some trauma if I hadn't gotten
I will
to
admit to
talk about
you,
it.
I had to time this so that I wasn't watching this before I went to bed, and I'm really glad I didn't.
No, I watched it this morning right before we talked.
I did as well because I
Yeah,
just was like, I can't do this before going to
yeah.
bed. So, but definitely, I think that this is worth watching. I think it's kind of not kind of. I think it's great to see these different ideas and treatments, and I really the like the cinematography of this alone was worth watching it for. So anyway,
Yeah,
um, all right. So anything else to say?
I think that's it. I think I'm ready to move on and throw this movie into the bottom of the fjord
All right, there we go.
where I'll see it later. I love you, movie. I mean that in the nicest way. I don't. Anyway, next time on this fair podcast, we will be talking about Jon Snow as a
You know
werewolf
nothing. You know nothing, Jon Snow.
with the beast within, and I'm excited.
I am too.
Yeah, this film will be our second werewolf film of the year, and therefore we might be transforming into lycanthropes.
Yes, we might be. I'm excited to see this. I don't know if you saw the trailer, but Kit Harington, it's great, and joined by
Lord
Lord Mormont.
Lord Mormont, the
So
old bear himself.
yeah,
What a trip down memory lane it must have been for the two of them.
yep. So I'm excited to watch this, and that would I'm looking forward to discussing that with you.
They both got to have scenes in Game of Thrones where they got stabbed by people from the Night's Watch.
Yep,
Hilarious. So many things they have in common, these two actors.
so many.
Okay, let's talk more about those all those things next time on Reanimated. If you want to let us know what you thought of handling the undead, get at us. Reanimatedpodcast@gmail.com. And you can find the rest of our episodes online at reanimated.podbean.com and on Spotify, where apparently a lot of people do listen to it, which is nice. So, yeah, holler at us. Thanks for listening, and toodaloo.
Until next time, thank you for listening. Ciao.